We're in the final days of the SEER Endurance Challenge, and many of you have uploaded results, posted on social media, and you are all motivating and inspiring others to do the same. And I can attest that I've been motivated through the last couple weeks to get out and push myself even more, just based on everything that you all have posted. I know when some of you post your run and your story, I definitely see the energy that comes from a lot of other people. And I wanted to just put this message out. I actually wanted to do it a few days ago, but I really wanted to take the time to refine it a little bit more and ensure that the proper message to those who still have miles was put out there and that each of you reached the end of your challenge. These challenges mean a lot to the SEER community, and each challenge represents a learned lesson that is taught to many SEER specialists even early in their career, and sometimes even later in their career as well. The distances, I think, are really special within the community, and I kind of want to just highlight a couple of these things. So we'll just start off with the 18 miler. The 18 miler is a lesson, I think, in terms of standards. It's never a quote, I need to get in shape for this or that. It's I'm ready. It's a lesson that you have the skills and the grit to align your actions as well as your words so that they agree with one another. You don't say one thing and then do another. The standard is what changes you when thinking goes from semi-committed to an all-in mentality. And that to me really is the big lesson that comes out of your 18 miler is the lesson of standards. The 32-mile distance is a classic ultra distance. Whether you run or ruck this distance, it requires preparation or planning. In survival, preparation and desire is usually extremely important. You can prepare and you can plan for many situations, but it's your desire to get you out of that situation that carries you. You have to be willing to put in the time, to sacrifice, to take chances, prep for survival, and know how to even suffer best. You're going to suffer. It's just a matter of how do you do it best. The distance is hard and it's fast. The distance shows that preparation and desire can aid in both success and failure. Take care of your needs, take the next step, and be ready to bounce back in moments of failure. To me, are the lessons that come out of the 32-mile distance. Speaking of bouncing back, quite possibly one of the best distances in ultra running is the 50 miler. Usually, it's the battleground for ultra running. It's hands down a tough distance. And when I think about this distance, I'm usually reminded of a quote by Marcus Aurelius. Um, Remember how long you've been putting this off, how many extensions the gods have given you, and you didn't use them. There is a time, or there is a limit to the time assigned to you, and if you don't use it to free yourself, it will be gone and never return. The notion that you can't stop the clock is really the lesson that I think you gain out of this 50-mile distance. You must keep grinding. It is what it is. The distance is hard, it's long. You get past that marathon pace and marathon distance, and you still have almost the same amount of distance beyond that. And to me, that's what the 50 mile is about. It's about the grind. It's about just putting your head down and your nose in the dirt and keep on pushing. Um, some of you have had questions about, how did we come up with the SEER mile? And the SEER mile challenge was a notion a few years ago when working with clients who most likely would have to endure some kind of treacherous route in order for them to escape or leave a particular area. And oftentimes it was over risky terrain. And there was a lot of, at the time, there was a lot of expert advice being tossed around. But the reality is that no one within the group never really experienced a survival situation where you were bugging out hard for 96 hours straight. And when I mean bugging out, I mean not just getting on a plane and leaving, but literally leaving a place or leaving a vehicle where it's at and going over land for 96 hours straight, and potentially how far you could actually do that in order just to get to friendly control. So the SEER mile, the lesson out of that is that it's a crucible. And it's an individual based free play scenario that's designed to test you and how far you can go in 96 hours. The final distance being 100 miles. The 100-mile mark in ultra running is kind of the ultimate. There's farther distances that are out there, but the 100 miles, to complete that in 48 hours, to complete it in 24 hours, is a really big push. But for, the normal Joes and the normal average people, 100 miles is a really long distance. And I think what is learned from this test is the notion that you can't stop the clock. When you understand that you can't stop what you can't control, then all you need to do is just be all in the circumstances that you're experiencing and fully committed to whatever you're doing in that very moment to better your situation. The lessons of the Seer Mile bring to light the importance behind the decisions that you make now and in that moment is most likely going to affect you in some shape or form in the future. The Seer Mile is all about that. Like I said, the crucible, we've seen people who in just the last few weeks gone out, did 25 miles and completely blistered their feet up or completely messed something up, not understanding or realizing what that would affect you and how it would affect you, down the road. And I think that the Seer Mile, being the crucible as it is, just reminds us that we have to do work to gain positive ground in any kind of situation, regardless of what the circumstances are. And those individuals definitely bounced back. They focused on small goals to achieve the greater good. And for me, that's really what the Seer Mile is all about. Last but not least is the Late Arrivals Challenge. And in the Late Arrivals Challenge, we pay homage to those who walked back behind enemy lines. Um, it was a club with the model that basically said it's never late to come back. And members, they wore a small winged boot on their medal. And the narrator, in a famous documentary about these folks, basically said it best when describing who these individuals were. And he quoted them basically by saying, many things are told from these members in terms of their experiences, but what they wouldn't mention was their courage and endurance. To survive anything, I think the lesson with the Late Arrivals Challenge is that it comes fully from believing in your will and your desire to push through. And in survival, a very famous pilot of a very famous pilot case study that came out of the Vietnam War was Ever Alvarez, who was one of the first pilots shot down, captured in 1963 and released in 1973. He described being a prisoner of war for that long and basically said, to survive, it was just a matter of wills. You have nothing to fight back with but your will to survive. The prisoners or the prison, the his captors used to tell him, "We'll keep you until you no longer have the will to fight us." And he would mentally be thinking in his head that as a prisoner, until you see that your battle is, you know, what that battle looks like, the only thing that you can fight back with is very simple rule. It's the fact that you can't fight physically, so you have to learn to survive and fight in the mental space. So for me, the Late Arrivals Challenge is really around and oriented around the idea of endurance and courage and just that big mental toughness that you need to have when you're dealing with a situation like a Late Arrivals Challenge, which is a 200-mile ordeal for us, over the last few weeks. It takes a lot of mental space, it takes a lot of mental preparation and focus in order to complete that particular task. I think across all the distances, whether you were challenged at an 18 mile or whether you were challenged at the 200 miles, just the courage to take that step forward is what I gained most inspiration out of. The courage to enter into the unknown and the endurance to keep grinding and pushing through whatever that particular challenge is, to me was super inspiring. And so, in the next couple days, I really just kind of want you all to think about and embrace, what these last few weeks were. For me, it was it was bringing a huge community together, and the board also about just what we can actually do as a community. And we did some really amazing things, and we will continue to do amazing things even through this next couple days. I just want to personally thank you for pushing me into an unknown for me, especially within the late arrivals challenge. But I also want to thank you all for what you're doing too. And I also want you to know that your story is being heard, and we're remembering all of the people who we're memorializing over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I guarantee you every single one of them would be telling each and every one of us to keep pressing, and then it's never too late. Keep going that extra step, keep going that extra mile, keep grinding. Some of you have a really long, challenge ahead of you in the last little weekend, and just keep this in mind and keep focusing on what you have and the task at hand. Don't think about getting to the top of the mountain. Think about taking that first step onto the mountain and continuing to push forward and forward. Thank you once again. Thank you for everything that you all have done for us. Like I said before, I've been super inspired and motivated just in my own challenges that I've been doing throughout the last 4 weeks. And I can't wait to see what you all are doing over the next few days. Talk to you all later.